Hello, friends. Andrew Elzagi here again to welcome you back to another episode of the Dubcast with Dubside. Dubside won't be joining us today. Instead, I have the pleasure of talking with sea kayaking coach and founder of the University of Sea Kayaking, Wayne Horodowich. Wayne is producer of several instructional videos, including Greenland Rolling with Maligiac and Dubside, the two-part DVD series. Wayne, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to be on the Dubcast.
Andrew, my pleasure.
I thought we would talk today about my two favorite subjects, making videos and Greenland-style kayaking. I should add that not all of your videos deal with Greenland style, and they're solidly based in the modern rather than the traditional style.
That's correct. I started doing my videos, instructional videos for sea kayaking. I had the pleasure of working with Ken Ford when he did performance sea kayaking. And Ken contacted me and I sent him an outline of what I thought his video should include. And next thing you know, I'm involved in the project. But Ken's philosophy was, and by his personal experience, and back then it was all VHS, it was no video should be more than 1 hour long. He said people are not going to watch more than an hour. So he did everything you need to know about sea kayaking in an hour. And Kent is great, bless his heart, but that assumption is crazy, that how could you put everything in 1 hour? So years later, I just said, I'm going to go do this on my own. And that's when digital editing came into being. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to try this. But my attitude was, rather than 1 hour, just at around that time, Kevin Costner came out with his, Dancing with Wolves. And it was a 3-hour movie. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, Hollywood was an hour and 20 minutes. That was it, hour and 10. And at the end of that movie, people wanted more. So I said, I'm just going to go for it. So I decided to do an in-depth instructional video series. And my first one was just Capsize, Recoveries, and Rescue Procedures, and that was 4 hours long. And since VHS can only go 206 minutes on a tape, I ended up making it a 2-volume set.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I got started. And then within my third video, which was the ABCs of the Surf Zone, everything was DVD by then. Mm-hmm. And in DVD, you can get double-layer DVDs, and you can have 3 to 4 hours of video on, one disc. So that was a transition. But I did all my instructional videos, and I'm sure you're going to ask me, how did I get into the Greenland one? And that was simple. In the August of 2010, I did a workshop up in Anacortes. Steve Corey's Skinboat School was hosting Maligiac for a Greenland boat building. It was an 8 to 10 day clinic, and at the end of the clinic, you had your own boat. And I have to say it was one of the platinum memories in my life, working with Maligiac and a friend of mine who happened to come up for the clinic, John Peterson, who owned Shaman Kayaks. So the three of us just hung out and built a boat, and I had my first Greenland boat. And that's when I got introduced to Maligiac closely. I met him numerous times before, but hanging out with him, we really, cemented a friendship.
Wow. I wanted to let you know that, when I first started sea kayaking, your videos were the first place I turned to. And even before I took my first on-the-water class, and I had copies of Capsize, Recoveries, and Rescues, and also Beyond the Cockpit with Derek Hutchinson and ABCs of the Surf Zone. And, I used to have those because I would loan those DVDs out and I would never get them back from people.
That's nice to hear. I'm glad. And I'm assuming they helped you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love the Derek Hutchinson video. It was really inspirational. And dealing with the surf zone, that DVD was very helpful, and it inspired me to get out into the surf. In Washington State, where I live, you have to drive out to the coast in order to get surf conditions. So it's not really that common among a lot of sea kayakers here to be paddling in surf.
Correct. Yes. When people would ask me if I would teach a surf class when I lived in Washington, I would tell them, it's a crapshoot. We can head all the way out there. It's going to take us a ferry ride and, an hour and a half to get to surf if the surf is there.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally stopped teaching surf classes just because of the logistics. But when I lived in Santa Barbara, you knew if the surf was up, I could hear it from my house. So, I would do lots of my clinics there.
Well, back to when you first met Maligiac, didn't you know kayak historian John Heath?
I met Maligiac with John Heath in Texas at the Houston Canoe Rendezvous. And John was taking Maligiac around, and Maligiac gave a demonstration of rolling in the pool. And when I first met him, let's just say at that time, his English wasn't as fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a number of years ago. I'd like to be able to say exactly what year, but it was in Brownsville, Texas. Brownsville State Park is where the Houston Canoe Club used to hold their rendezvous. And that's the first time that I ran into Maligiac.
And were you there as an instructor, or?
I was flown in as one of the instructors.
And what were your first impressions of Maligiac and Greenland style at the time?
Well, I've known about Greenland style for quite a while. As a matter of fact, in my first video, when I do the introduction to Capsize, Recoveries, and Rescues, I have a person there's a short clip just talking about how kayaking, used to be used for survival and hunting. And I have a clip of someone in their skin boat. I believe they may be even throwing a harpoon, but they're wearing one of the traditional Aleut hats, the wooden hats.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I also have pictures of Chris Cunningham doing a few rolls up at the West Coast Sea Kayak Symposium. So I was familiar with Greenland kayaking, but my focus personally was on sea kayaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not really get into, quote, Greenland kayaking until I made my boat with Maligiac.
Mm.
And that was August 2010, if I didn't mention that. Ironically, it turned out to be the fastest boat in my fleet. I had about 13 boats, and I would use that boat with a wing paddle when I would race the Deception Pass Dash, because it was the fastest boat that I had.
Yeah, the Deception Pass Dash, that's always a cool race.
Yeah, and I also did the first and second downwind to Fuca race. And in fact, I did that race also with the wing paddle and my skin boat, and I won that race.
Wow.
Yeah, it was about a 13-mile run. And I'm telling you, that boat was just sweet.
Well, he must know how to make those kayaks.
Well, yeah, it was a fantastic experience every day just to sit there and put this thing together. And it's so funny because after we put it together, we put, I believe it's tung oil. Mm-hmm. We put all over the wood, and it happened that my frame had a lot of red and yellow cedar. So after we put the oil on, I took a picture of it, and I put it on green grass, and that's when I took the picture. Mm-hmm. The frame was so beautiful, I almost stopped the clinic right there and said, that's it. I'm not putting skin on this. I'm taking it home, and I'm hanging it above my fireplace. That's how beautiful it looked. And I still have pictures of that. I just loved it. There's so much history, and there's so much experience from native kayaking that some of that gets lost in modern day teaching. And I find that sad. And this is not to put any blame on any organization, but when you have, organizational teaching, BCU, ACA, makes no difference. They have to come up with standards. And there are certain things that they agree upon and things they don't agree upon. And there are some things that they just don't do as part of their curriculum, such as extended paddle work. Mm-hmm. You look at Greenland, how much of it is extended paddle? Because, and the paddle is user-friendly for that. The Euro-style blades are traditionally not user-friendly for extended paddle techniques unless you really learn how to hold it correctly. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a sadness that I have that certain things get lost. And that's what I try to put into my teaching. I try to incorporate not only modern techniques, but let's not forget all these techniques that have been developed over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yes. Some people would say thousands of years.
Yes, thousands of years is more correct.
Do you personally have been involved in certification, either in the ACA or BCU?
Both. I was an instructor trainer for ACA, and I had some coaching level. I forget 3, 4. I forget what I had for BCU. But I personally don't like spending the time and energy to stay recertified. And my goal is not to get people certified. My goal is to teach kayaking. Mm-hmm. So when people say, hey, can I take a class and get certified? I'll send them to a friend of mine who is an active instructor. And I say, but if you want to learn how to kayak, all aspects of kayaking, then I'll work with you.
Okay.
Not that, if you take a certification class, you're not going to learn kayaking, but I don't like being tied to a particular curriculum.
Do you think certification is valuable for people who are not an instructor or coaching path, for instance?
Well, certification, this is probably a small tangent, but the only reason you have certification is supposedly consistency. If instructor on the East Coast teaches a level 1 class, and the student takes the class, and at the end of that class, on that particular day, they can demonstrate everything that's supposed to be in a level 1 class. Then if they go to a different instructor on the West Coast to take a level 2 class, that instructor on the West Coast, their level 1 class should be identical to the one on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. All right? And there shouldn't be any deviation to that. Well, my experience, that doesn't exist. Because every human being who teaches puts their own little twist on things. So the purpose of certification is consistency. And that's where I think many times it falls short because it's difficult to, quote, police it. It's how do you go around to say, hey, you're teaching it the way it's supposed to be done, or you're not? That's the reason for certification. The good thing about any of these is that there is a standard that has been created, and if somebody takes a class, hopefully they're going to get, let's say, the agreed upon standard. So from a safety standpoint, I think certification is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are certain basics that people have to learn.
Yeah, now I'm remembering now when I first started, if I wanted to go kayaking in Deception Pass in the Currents, for instance, instructors would not know what level I was at. They had no idea if I knew how to roll or even knew how to wet exit.
Right.
So that's where that certification makes sense.
Well, yes, but what you just said is, okay, let's say if you came in and rather than name an organization, you say, okay, I've passed a level 3. That doesn't mean that you're going to be able to perform your role when you flip over in Deception Pass, and it doesn't mean on that particular day that you're going to be able to do a successful solo recovery.
Yeah.
All it means is on the day that you took the class, you were able to do it. That's all it means. So if I'm an instructor, when I ask people, what's your formal training, they tell me their formal training. But I do not personally assume that they could do everything they're telling me. Because I could tell you, Andrew, that we're all legends in our own mind. And when I ask people, how many of you can roll, let's say 4 out of the 8 people in my class raised their hand. And I said, okay, well, my definition of a reliable roll is if I come over to you and while we're talking, I say, hey, look at that eagle up there. And you turn to look at the eagle. And then I knock you over. I don't do that. But if I were to knock you over, if you could roll up, that's a reliable roll.
Yeah.
If you're an individual, when I say, let me see your roll, and then you first put your nose plugs on, and then you start to set up, and you go, you want me to roll now? Yeah, just roll. Which side do I roll on? Well, whatever side you want. Okay, well, I'm getting ready to roll. Okay, go do it. That's not a reliable roll. Okay, so again, it's up to an individual instructor to assess his students while he has them. If I'm told that someone's taken 3 formal classes before, I go, that's great. But no matter what they tell me, the first thing I do before I put any class on the water is how many of you have done a wet exit? And I have everybody raise their hand. And I say, okay, I want my entire class, look at each other. Everybody here is indicating that they could do a wet exit on their own with their spray skirt attached. To me, that's the basic. As long as you can get out of your boat, I can work with you from then on. And if you can't, I'll teach you how to get out of the boat. Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I do not knock it at all. I think they do great work. They've raised the safety standards. When I started teaching kayaking, ACA was not teaching sea kayaking. As a matter of fact, I was flown out to the East Coast to help work on the original manual.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we met at Charleston at James County Island Park, and a couple of representatives, one of which was Sutherland, Chuck Sutherland. He came up with the NavAid, and another individual. And we went over the basics of the first ACA instructor manual. And this is before ACA had their sea kayaking certification. They had whitewater, but not sea kayaking.
I'm curious, what role did kayak rolling play in the sea kayaking instruction?
They were adamant that an instructor needs to be able to roll.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't disagree with that, but I indicated to them that at UCSB, where I was teaching a full-on sea kayaking program, I had an incredible instructor. The guy was great. There's no way he could roll a kayak. Just couldn't do it. But in terms of one of the better instructors I've ever had the pleasure of working with, Don was it. He went upside down. He was disoriented, just couldn't make head nor tail of it. So if he ever capsized, he would get out, do a solo recovery, and continue on his way, which leads to the next obvious logical conclusion. Everybody blows a roll. So whether you can roll or not, to get your instructor certification, at some time or other, you may flip over and you can't roll and you're going to have to get out. And then you're going to have to do a solo recovery. And if you can accept that as a scenario and a possibility, then why do you have to demonstrate a roll in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Don could teach rolling, but he couldn't do it. So he would never become an ACA instructor, nor did he care to be, because he was confident that he knew what he was doing and that he could, teach others.
That is very impressive, because I can roll and I could never teach rolling.
It's an understanding. Some people can get it. There are some people who can, once they know a skill, they can articulate how to do it. And that's where I think all instructional programs fall short. They give you very basic teaching rudimentary skills, and they focus mostly on the skills, which they have to given the time. But to go into different education theory, how and where to stand from a safety standpoint when teaching, really getting into understanding the biomechanical aspects of how a body moves and what's safe and what's unsafe. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's hard to do in the amount of time that they have for, in instructor courses. Yeah. So they have to work within the time they have.
Back to making videos.
Yes.
Were you into sea kayaking before you started making videos, or?
Yeah, I started sea kayaking in the early 80s. And I think Ken Ford's video came out in the 90s.
That's performance sea kayaking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because from what I gathered, Kent was a C1 boater, which is whitewater kayak kneeling. And he was involved in Olympic trials, and I don't think he hit the Olympic team, but I know he was high up there. And he did his whitewater videos. So he was known for his whitewater videos, instructional videos, and then he decided to do a sea kayaking one. And from what I gathered, when Ken called me, he said he checked with all of his friends, and he said, 5 out of 6 people recommended me for the sea kayaking, that he should contact me. And he did. And he sent me his script, and there was so much to change on it. He basically sent me the script that he had for his whitewater basic and just try to make it into sea kayaking. And so I sent him a whole bunch of notes, and then he contacted me 2 days later just saying, hey, I want you on the project. So I was able to, tweak his stuff to sea kayaking rather than just the basics of whitewater paddling. A lot of it is, transferable, but there are other that's kind of just unique for sea kayaking.
So did he teach you the technical skills about videography and editing, and how did?
No, I wish he did. He had a cameraman who, again, I'm going by memory here. I think his name was John. Really nice guy. He worked for a TV show or news, whatever, in Sacramento. So he had access to the equipment. And he was Kent's videographer. And after the stuff was in the can, those guys went and did whatever. The only thing I learned was, sitting there just doing it in front of the camera. But I didn't learn anything else. When I decided to get involved and do this, I was, as a matter of fact, what motivated me, it was very funny. I was reading a Sea Kayaker magazine, and there was an interview, or Paddler, I think it was Paddler, an interview with Ken Ford, and he was talking about his videos. At the end of the article, it said, oh yeah, the Performance Sea Kayaking sold over 100,000 copies. And I read that, and I went, I find that hard to believe, but I was blown away. And I'm thinking, God, I wish I would have asked for $1 royalty for each video.
Wow.
I wish. I said, that would have been sweet. Now, Kent did not say that. They got it wrong.
Okay.
But I saw that. I'm going, maybe I should do my own videos. I've been wanting to do an in-depth series. So I started reading, and they had talked about digital cameras and digital editing. So I went down to Los Angeles, and I took a 3-day digital editing class. And then about a year later, I took another 3-day class that included not only filming, editing, and sound. And I decided I was just going to bite the bullet, buy the equipment, get the computer that I needed, and just do it.
Yeah.
And I did it. My first video, as I said, was a capsize recovery and rescue procedures. And I remember after having it all done, I had it edited, it's on the computer, and I hit the button to transfer it over to a tape so I could send it in for replication. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't. Oh, it wouldn't export out of the computer. Andrew, I swear to you, I started crying. I'm serious. I was weeping. I had spent one entire month. I took the month off from work at UCSB, and I worked from 6 in the morning to midnight for 30 days in a row to get this.
Wow.
And when I hit that button and it didn't do what it had to do, I lost it. I just lost it. Obviously, it got figured out, but 30 days of just nonstop built up inside of me. Yeah. And the idea of hitting that button was supposed to be relief, and it wasn't relief. So, yeah. Welcome to technology. So yeah. I was 2 3-day clinics, and then after that, it was just trial and error, self-taught.
Mm-hmm. Well, then after you make the video, of course, there's the whole issue of distributing it and marketing it.
Yes, and I will give credit to Ken Ford again, because I contacted him. I said, hey, Kent, I'm doing these videos, and I told him specifically that, while I appreciate, the performance sea kayaking, the 1 hour, I'm going for in-depth, however long it takes. And he goes, Wayne, I disagree with you, but go for it. And Kent is such a professional, such a gentleman. He recommended, I said, who does your tape, who replicates? He gave me all of his contacts. And in terms of distribution, he helped me out that way if I wanted to contact some other people for distribution. And it wasn't that I was taking money out of his mouth. He was just more than happy to help.
That's great to have him as a resource.
Yes, Kent's always been great.
So how successful was your series?
Well, I think they were successful during their time.
Yeah.
They did not reach that 100,000, So, because I'm going, oh my God. Actually, I had a nightmare about it. I was just at the point of finishing off the video, and I was thinking, okay, let's say this gets done. I'm going to be distributing it. I'm going to be selling it from my garage. What happens if I get 10,000 orders?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, it takes so many minutes to write down the label, then these many minutes to put the label on, and then to stuff it in, and then take it to the post office. And then I'm thinking, if I have to do that 10,000, it's going to take me 3 months to fill the orders. I woke up in a cold sweat because then I'm thinking I have to hire people, and I'm going to have to get health insurance for the staff, and I was having a nervous breakdown. And the truth be told, I was able to handle more than adequately all the orders, or say all the lack of orders that came. So, no, they were good. I was able to make back my original investment for all the equipment within the first year. And after that, it was all gravy.
Nice.
Other than, the cost of replication. But once iPhones came out and YouTube, I sell very few videos now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And, to be honest, a lot of the stuff that's up on YouTube, there's some good stuff up there. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, somebody bootlegs my stuff and posts it on YouTube. And when I find out about it, I have to go through so many different forms with YouTube to have it removed. Because there are people who just load my entire video up there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I don't know why they would do something like that, that they don't even have the courtesy to contact me. But that's just the way it is. I still sell some videos, and I have, let's say, a small supply that I'll probably have until I die of videos. And if they want them, that's great.
Well, let's talk about making Rolling with Maligiac and Dubside.
Okay.
How did that come about?
It came about when Maligiac contacted me. He contacted me in January. I was working on my what would have been my last video. It was the art of maneuvering, and I started working on it. I had the script done, and I started doing the voicing, and I had shot most of the footage for it, and I was planning on having it done. And I believe that was 2011. Yeah, January of 2011. And Maligiac called me on the phone, and he said, could you do a Greenland video for me, with me? And I went, yeah. We discussed the details. And I said, well, when do you want to work on it? Because I'm on this project. He says, I have to have it done by the end of February because my wife's due and she's going to give birth. And I go, oh, okay. Let me think about this. So we talked about it. And I, checked the schedule, and I said, you know what? We can't do it up here, but how about we shoot a Greenland video in Santa Barbara, California, which I thought was ironic. Because I was able to get access to the pool at UC Santa Barbara. And then my friend John, who lives in Ventura, which is just south of Santa Barbara, he makes skin boats. And Maligiac was able to get down there and make his own skin boat for the video.
Oh, yeah. John Peterson of
yes, John
Shaman Kayaks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I first met him at the Skinboat School in Anacortes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's John came up when I did the Maligiac clinic.
He's an amazing craftsman and artist.
Yes, he is. He does beautiful work.
Yeah. I had heard about the Skinboat School, and I was in the neighborhood, and I just decided to go and check it out. And he was there. He had made a Bidarka and a Greenland kayak. He had, these leather seat back cushions that he made, and the leather rigging with these intricately carved bone toggles with walruses and seals and
whales. Yes.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, John does incredible work. John made a boat for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he made me my rolling boat.
Okay.
The boat I made with Maligiac, the back of the cockpit coaming was too high for traditional Greenland rolling. So I used it as a training boat for racing and used it to race. But John Peterson made a rolling boat for me where I could just lay on the back deck. And I used it for a few Greenland competitions that I decided to enter.
Okay. And he went on to organize the traditional Arctic kayak symposium on the West Coast for a number of years.
Down south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. TAPS. Yeah. So he was involved in making the video.
He was a sponsor of the video.
Okay.
So on the back of the videos, you see sponsored by Shaman Kayaks.
Okay. Back up a little bit. You said that Maligiac called you in January?
Yes, he called me in January of 2011 and says, would you be willing, but you'd have to be finished by the end of February.
That's pretty short notice.
Yes, it is. And while I was trying to see if I can make this work, Dubside calls me.
Oh.
And Dubside says, Wayne, I hear you and Maligiac are going to be doing this. And I'm thinking, how the hell did he hear about this? He goes, can I be involved? You don't have to pay me anything, I'd like to be involved. And I said, well, let me check with Maligiac. Well, Maligiac told him.
Okay.
So I contact Maligiac, because I didn't, this is Maligiac's project, theoretically. He contacted me.
Yeah.
And I contact Maligiac, and he goes, sure. So I contact Dubside, and I said, yeah, let's do it. And when we all got together, rather than, he said, can I help? We kind of discussed what we wanted to do. And at that point, I said, look, let's just make this a three-way partnership. Whatever we do, we split three ways. And that's what we did. Okay. It just turned out that Maligiac was the talent. Dubside was partial talent, but he was significantly involved in the editing, but very much in the voicing, because he voiced it. He voiced it a few times, because the first time he voiced it, we listened to the tape, and I went, no, that's not going to work. So while we were in John Peterson's house, I had him reading the script, and I sat in there with him, and we spent a few hours in that room. And when he would read things, sometimes, he would go too fast or not, and this is not to criticize him, this is anyone. who, voices.
Yeah.
So while I was there, I said, no, okay, I didn't understand that, or do it again. And so between the two of us, we got his voicing. And his contribution was phenomenal because we really wanted to have the Greenlandic names, the pronunciation, the spelling. We wanted this DVD, this video, to really represent all of the roles that are done in the Greenland competition. We looked at it not only just as an instructional video, but a historical video. And I really believe, I don't care who comes out with another one in the future. I don't think they can beat it. I personally don't, because I think everything is included in there that really needs to be included. We have the Greenlandic language included. We had the 8-time world championship doing the maneuvers. Dubside is fantastic, in Greenland maneuvers. We have him demonstrating, and we have 3 views. We have the above view looking straight down. Dubside was up on top of the high dive filming. I was underwater filming from below, and we had a camera filming from the side. So there's nothing left to the imagination when you look at the video footage of every maneuver.
Yeah, it's very comprehensive.
Yeah, and it just turned out that the pool we used, I used to be the director of that facility before I retired. And my pool manager, she kept that water crystal clear. And you could see it. You can absolutely see it.
Very similar, but of course, far surpasses John Heath's classic, Rolling with Maligiac.
Yes. But that's a good video. But, even the water clarity, you can see the difference.
Mm-hmm.
We really just spread it out. Even to be able to get the walrus pull, we're showing that from on top and under the water.
I'll have to watch that again.
It's in there. It's in number 2.
Okay.
And that was the other thing. When we decided to do this, I said, well, let's go down to Santa Barbara because we got places to stay. We have the facility for underwater shots and for just basic video shots. And then we shot footage out from the Santa Barbara Harbor. I was out on the breakwater, and we were able to put it all together. The part that we were all laughing about, we were doing the introduction to the video at my mother-in-law's house, and there's Maligiac and Dubside sitting in front of a palm tree doing the introduction to Greenland kayaking, and I'm going, folks, this ain't working. A palm tree just doesn't do it.
Oh, yeah.
So we went down to the harbor, and we did the intros down there.
With them sitting in their kayaks.
Yeah, with them sitting in their kayaks. And to tell you the truth, all that footage, the wind noise was too strong, so we dubbed it in. We revoiced it at my house up in Washington.
Oh, wow.
And then just dubbed it in. And we kept the background noise, so it sounds like we're talking right there.
Wow. Well, I'm impressed. I couldn't tell watching it.
And here's a little side note. When I did my dubbing, there was one part that Dubside wasn't satisfied with. He says, the lip sync just wasn't right, and so he threw in a barking dog. You're going to have to listen to it. But you're going to hear when I was talking, a dog barking. He threw that in there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So did you have any creative differences that you had to iron out?
Really no, because the filming and the editing part, I did the majority of that. Dubside worked on the sound. because he's a sound guy in his career.
Mm-hmm.
He used to be like a sound guy for, major bands.
Yeah.
So he was really sensitive to sound. So he did a really good job on that. He did editing also, because he came over to my place and I think he stayed there for about a month, doing a little editing here and there. But the bulk of the laying down the voice track and that, I did that. We agreed upon a script, and after filming each day, we would go look at the dailies on the computer and see what we needed to film again. And it worked out really, really well. It was an incredible collaborative effort, I have to say. There was no fighting. My only irritation was with Dubside, because I would say, hey, that sounds great. He goes, no, did you hear that little in there? I go, no, I didn't hear it. He goes, I heard it. I got to voice it again. I'm like, Jesus, leave it alone, That's the only, I have to say, literally the only frustration. He was such a perfectionist on the sound.
Yeah.
If there was a little sound, he said, I can't do it. I just can't do it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, but he's wonderful to collaborate with.
Oh, yeah, we had a great time. It was a fun project, and we got it done. We got all the filming done before the end of February, and then it was just a matter of editing. So I went back up to Washington. I started doing the editing, and then I think it was somewhere in June, Dubside showed up to help with editing and some other things.
How did you first meet Dubside, and what were your first impressions of him?
Dubside, I love you, but the first time I saw you, I just said, who is this ninja? This bearded ninja running around the Charleston Sea Kayak Symposium. He just looked so out of place. That's the first time I met him, and he was hanging out with Doug Simpson from Feathercraft and doing a whole bunch of rolling and stuff. And that's the first time I saw him. And, met him, but it was just like a passing, hi, how are you? At these symposiums, there's so many hundreds of people that, he was just another guy there, but he looked different. He's kind of unique. But every year I would see him there. Yeah, that was my first run-ins with Dubside.
And that was the symposium where Derek Hutchinson would show up there, too.
Derek Hutchinson would show up there, yes, he would. That was the East Coast Canoe and Kayak Festival. Yeah, run by the Charleston Recreation Department.
And you were close friends with Derek Hutchinson. Yes.
We turned out to be extremely close friends. Didn't start out that way, but it ended that way.
Well, how did you first meet him, and how did that relationship develop?
Well, Derek Hutchinson was my guru before I met him. The first book on sea kayaking I picked up was the Derek Hutchinson book. I was self-taught. I had a whitewater boat. I was running the outdoor program for UC Santa Barbara. And I said, I'm going to start a kayaking program. So I took one of the whitewater boats, and I would go along the coastline. I didn't know how to roll, and I stayed on the shore side of the kelp bed, because if I were to capsize, I would have to get out and swim to shore. So I would go out about 5 times a week, just paddle up and down the coast, and till I learned how to roll. When I learned how to roll, I was trying to teach myself how to roll, and I had a 50-50 shot. It was all muscle. And then a friend of mine came back from a whitewater class, and he goes, hey, coach, I learned about this thing called hip snap. So we went to the pool, and we says, get in the boat, and got on the boat next to the side of the pool, and he says, this is hip snap, and he tells me what to do, and he says, okay, go do the roll, hip snap, and then come up head up last. Oh. Well, my first roll, because I was so used to muscling, I came up so fast, I went over on the other side. I did a 360. After that, I like to say I had a bomb-proof roll. The world was my oyster, you know.
Yeah.
I would go out beyond the kelp bed, and I could do whatever I wanted. And then I contacted Perception Kayak, and I ordered 6 Chinook kayaks and 2 Sea Lions. And that was the start of our sea kayaking program at UC Santa Barbara. And when I got Derek's book, I'm going, okay, I developed, because I could read the book and go, all right, that's how you do this, this, and this, and go out and do it. I'd read it, go do it. And I just started teaching. And then I eventually met Derek for the first time at the Charleston Symposium. And growing up in New York, I used different language, but let's just say he was a jerk.
Okay.
You know, the typical, a lot of people meet Derek, they hate his guts. Sounded very unprofessional and egocentric, but I still loved him because of his contribution. And again, he was my idol, but I was kind of dissatisfied with our first meeting.
Okay.
And I go, oh, that's the way he is. And the next time we ran into each other, both of us were flown up to Bayfield, Wisconsin to teach at the Inland Sea Kayak Symposium. And we stayed in the same hotel. There was only one hotel in town. And we hung out together. And that was the basis. That's what started our friendship. And then he started teaching, or I'd say I was teaching with him, he was teaching with me, because I told him, you know, what I taught and, you know, how often I did clinics. And he said, well, you know, can you organize clinics for me? And I told him, I said, no. And he looked at me, he goes, why not? And I said, I can't be involved with you in clinics. He goes, why? I said, because your reputation. And now what I told him, and this is a fact, I said, asshole. I said, you're an asshole. You treat people, you know, very belligerently, and it's just, I can't be associated with that. And he goes, how about if I behave myself?
Wow.
So I said, if you behave yourself, yeah, we could work together. And he did. A couple of friends of mine who used to own Southwind Sea Kayaks, Doug and Joanne Schwartz, when we did some clinics for them, I remember Joanne came over to me and said, what happened to Derek? He's a kinder and gentler Derek.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that must have been a real wake-up call for him.
I think it was. See, Derek would just tell it like it is. And the other half of it is he is really a sweet man. He really is. But he has very strong opinions, which all of us do. For him, kayaking is a life or death situation. The waters around the United Kingdom are not user-friendly. So his view of kayaking, you take it serious or you don't take it at all. Plus, his English humor, his dry English wit, is many times mistaken as criticism. So, you know, you have to learn to take Derek, you know, with a grain of salt. But again, he became the dearest friend with me. I just loved spending time with him. I would travel England regularly. We would kayak there. and we spent numerous hours driving to and from clinics all the way up and down the West Coast, from Canada all the way down to San Diego. So we did clinics all along the coast regularly. And when we drove, we made a pact with one another. Whoever knows they're going to die first, the other one's going to be there with them. And unfortunately, Derek got cancer in 2011. And in 2012, October, I flew in 2 weeks after hip replacement because he took a turn for the worst. And I was there when he died, and I did his eulogy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was the hardest thing I ever had to do. Yeah, but we had so many great times together. I really, he was a close friend. I was his protege in many ways, kind of a father figure, but we just loved hanging out. And I remember once during a clinic, we were doing a clinic together, and I'm assisting in the clinic. It's his clinic, and he doesn't even introduce me. So at the end of the class, I go, it'd be nice to tell people who I am. He goes, I didn't introduce you. I said, no, your ego was too big. You were just talking about yourself. So the next morning, we had a 2-day clinic. He introduces me, and he gave me the best compliment I could ever get from Derek Hutchinson, which was, this is Wayne Horodowich. He'll be assisting me. He is an example of shining mediocrity. I'm serious. That's what he said.
British humor.
So that's again, the English humor.
Yeah.
There are two types of people. The people who hated him, and actually three. The people who hated him, the people who loved him, and the people who wanted to hate him but had to love him. He really was a character. But he wrote the first book on sea kayaking.
Yep.
And ever since then, there are people who have modeled so many things after Derek Hutchinson. He was definitely an incredible influence on the sport of sea kayaking.
Mm-hmm. And you made this video together, Beyond the Cockpit.
Yes, Beyond the Cockpit. He said, I don't want to do the video. And I go, why not? Because then they don't want to take my class.
Oh, yeah.
And I go, well, Derek, there are a lot of people who will never take your class. And I said, I will guarantee you now you'll make more money on the video than you do in your classes. And every time I sent him a royalty check, he would go, you were right.
Yeah. And it's a great document, too.
Oh, it's a historical document. That's how I look at it. And what's even more historical is the last video I did with him where he discusses his North Sea crossing. I have a 2-disc video that's out. Let's see, the title is The North Sea Crossing and Yarns from the Cockpit.
Okay.
And it's 2 discs on Derek Hutchinson, and that is truly an historic video because I actually have pictures of his garage where he built his 16-foot, 10-inch kayak.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So one last question. How can people find you on the internet?
www.useakayak.org. So it's useakayak.org. It's University of Sea Kayaking. I still have hundreds of articles up on my website, educational ones, and I have a store where I have my DVDs. I have my new book, Practicing Good Judgment, up on there, and I will be writing another book on guiding this winter.
Oh, wow.
And also, I had the pleasure of editing and redoing Derek's complete book of sea kayaking, the 40th anniversary edition. I got contacted by the publisher through his son. I got the first right of refusal to do the next edition, and it was a pleasure to do. It was a pleasure to do.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Wayne.
You're welcome, Andrew, and give my love to Dubside, and good luck with all this. And send me a link when this goes up of how I could listen to it. So this I could out and go, my God, why didn't he edit this out? I never said that. I'm sorry. This is fake news.